In summary, she's a great lady of spiritual substance. She has character. She cares. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Miss Donna Lamb.
Let's see here. Now, can everybody see me well enough over this podium? All right, because I like to be close to my audience, especially one as wonderful as this. And I'm just so honored and pleased to be here tonight, and so grateful that Dr. Filoki invited me here to talk about the subject that is so dear to my heart. And the day that I called him on the telephone when I saw an article about his book, The Real Holocaust, in the Daily Challenge, and I said, now that's a book I have to read. And I called him up, and I never, ever knew that after reading that fine book that it would eventually lead to me standing here at this podium in this room tonight, and I'm just so pleased that it did. So I thought I'd just plunge right in by telling you why I, a white American woman, support reparations to descendants of slavery. To me, it's a simple fact that for 250 years, we robbed millions of enslaved Africans of the wealth that their labor created. They were forced to work for free while white families, companies, and the U.S. government made huge fortunes off of their labor. Who profited went far beyond slave owners, as I'll be saying a little bit more about later. Since they were paid nothing, the descendants of enslaved Africans inherited nothing. The money that should have been paid to them instead went into the pockets of whites and was passed down generation after generation in our families instead of yours. That's the root cause of the huge economic disparity between blacks and whites that still exists in our country today. And the crime of slavery wasn't only financial. We committed indescribable mental, physical, and spiritual brutality against enslaved Africans. They and their offspring were property for life, chattel, to do with as we pleased. Beat them, work them to death, breed them like cattle, or rape them. We also robbed persons of African ancestry of their identity as a people, stripping from them their mother tongues, traditional religions, and original cultures as we forced upon them our European language, religion, and customs. Then, far from apologizing and making restitution for what we'd done during the enslavement, we followed it up with another crime, institutionalized racism, which, as many of you know even better than I do, is still alive and current in our country even now, including up south where I live in New York City. Well, I gotta tell it like it is, folks. This is because the mindset that slavery was based on, the belief that a person of African descent is less than a white person, has not changed centrally. Oh yeah, laws have been passed that have forced people to refrain from some of the most flagrant racist practices, but there is still a gigantic amount of discrimination that permeates every aspect of American life, in education, housing, the job market, finance, as to medical care, in relation to the police and the criminal just us system, and more, all causing tremendous suffering to blacks, as well as making it just about impossible for most to achieve financial parity with whites. What this all means is that there has been one long, unbroken line of economic exploitation and racial injustice. The two are inextricably related, that has lasted from 1619, when the first captive Africans were kidnapped and brought against their will to these shores, all the way up to the present. Therefore, it's my personal belief that the U.S. government owes reparations not only for what we did up through the official end of slavery in 1865, when the 13th Amendment was ratified, but for what continued long after with things like the Tulsa race riot and all the other things that are very much alive and sick today. This country has never ceased waging war on the black man, and I will not cease my war on that until I am 6 feet under or it ends, whichever comes first. Now, especially after a statement like that, you may wonder, how did I get this way? What are my motives? What caused me to make reparations as my top priority in life? And well, you might ask, too, what any of us whites are doing in the reparations movement, for I'm fully aware that we have a terrible track record when it comes to joining people of color movements. Well, this is what happened with me. I was once your standard little white progressive woman living in my little white world. However, I did have a sincere hatred of racism, the euphemism that we all use for white supremacy, which led me, perhaps as many as 20 years ago, to begin reading about slavery. Even though I had the general idea of what had happened, I didn't really know much about the nuts and bolts of the enslavement. As I read, it soon became very clear that in permitting chattel slavery, this country had committed an atrocity of massive proportions against African people. Therefore, when I eventually came across the concept of reparations, it seemed like the most natural thing in the world to support it. I remember feeling that just as slavery is now seen as wrong, that reparations would surely be seen as right. In my naivete, it seemed so obvious. Needless to say, was I wrong. When the subject of reparations began to trickle out into the mainstream white consciousness, I saw that we were in for a real fight. But far from causing me to back off, it only made me more determined to stick up for reparations. After all, it is my people who committed this crime against humanity, my people who are now trying to worm out of taking responsibility for it. So who more than me should step up to the plate and try to right this wrong? I would feel like I myself were committing a crime if I said, yeah, my people did and are doing these awful things, but don't expect me to do anything about it. It's up to you to fight for justice from us, not me. I would loathe myself if I were that kind of a depraved individual. Self-respect. It's as simple as that. That's why I do it. And as I started reaching out to other white people on this subject, I saw increasingly how virulent the opposition is, including among so-called progressives and people who I once counted as my closest friends. But I knew that regardless of what it cost me, I must put the struggle for reparations at the center of my life, that I could not live with myself if I did anything less. And I was really delighted when several years ago, one of my articles on the internet about reparations caught the attention of someone who put me in touch with Ida Hakeem, a white woman who founded Caucasians United for Reparations and Emancipation. I joined CURE immediately, and soon I became its communications director. Our purpose is to reach out to other white people and have them see that reparations is right and just. We also provide help to those who already are supporters of reparations but need guidance about how to advocate for reparations most effectively among other whites, because as you can imagine, it ain't easy. And there's a lot for all of us to learn, including myself. Ida founded CURE over 12 years ago, and our members are sort of sprinkled throughout the country. CURE's sole reason for existence is to support full and complete reparations through Black-led initiatives. Now, even as we say full and complete reparations, CURE fully recognizes that the damage our people caused was so massively horrendous that there is no reparations or restitution that can ever be large enough, nothing that can ever bring back the dead or make up for the pain and suffering, the devastation to a people that we brought about. But we must get as close to that as we possibly can, to the repair. And repair, by the way, not as we see it, but as envisioned by people of African descent who we harmed. Next, I thought you might like to know some of what is it that I actually say to other white people to try to have them support reparations, since, as I've said, that is my main function in this great struggle. First, I tell them, don't believe what the mainstream press and media tells us about this subject. The government, backed by its powerful henchmen, the press and media, wants white people to fear and hate the idea of reparations, and they feed us misinformation to try to have us do so. Anytime that you see them introducing a TV show with a statement like, "Should every black be given $1 million?" you can be sure they're mocking. They are not dealing with this subject seriously. Reparations isn't just about X amount of money being given to X amount of people, and don't listen to anyone who tries to tell you that it is. Nor is reparations about money being taken out of every white person's personal bank account and handed over to African Americans, as the spreaders of misinformation can make it seem. Individuals do not pay reparations. Reparations is what a government pays the people it has wronged for them to use to repair the damage it has done to them. The way we would pay reparations is the same way that we pay for anything else that our government does, even the things that we're vehemently opposed to, with our tax dollars. I also tell people that legal cases can be and are being brought against specific entities, such as insurance companies that got their start insuring slave owners against the law